Sound check. 1 2 1 2. Sound check. 1 2 1 2. Starting here. Starting there. Good morning, everybody. Sorry that we started late. I take responsibility for that. Hope everybody's had a great Thanksgiving weekend, and some of you who were here yesterday, welcome back. Let me make sure we are live on all our platforms. Before we get into what we need to get into here today, we good over here, good over there. Yes, and we good over here. Turn that off. We good here. We good here. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Brittany. Good to see you here. CJ, good morning. As y'all are coming in, you can shout yourselves out in the comments section. You can tell me your name and location. I used to always ask people that when I started my live streams. I haven't done it recently, but let me get my pinned comment up on over here on Instagram. By the way, those of you who are whatever platform you're watching me on, I'm live in 7 different platforms right now. So we currently have LinkedIn, we have Facebook, we have, is this on? We got Rumble and X. We got YouTube, we got Instagram, and we have TikTok. So Anna checking in from Miami Beach. Shout out to Miami Beach, one of my favorite places. Shout out to everybody in Miami Beach. I need to go to Miami Beach. Actually, I haven't been there in a few weeks, but I need to go over there and see what's up. So we got Georgetown, Texas. Ohio is in the building. Let's see. All right. Shout out to Pennsylvania, the state that I'm actually from. So what we're going to talk about here today, y'all see the topic. Oh, and by the way, make sure you're following me on more than one app, because this topic that we're going to get into here today, I don't know if TikTok's going to like this one, but I'm going to do my best to speak carefully around what we need to speak about. So make sure you follow me I'm on YouTube. I'm live on YouTube right now. So just look up my name, Dre Baldwin. My name is in the top. I think y'all can see my name in the top left corner right there. That's my actual name, Dre Baldwin. So if you just look me up on any other app, you'll find me. Make sure you are following me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Rumble, X, and I think that's everything. In addition to TikTok, just in case anything happens over here. Because I'm live on all these platforms and any one of them could do anything. But this is the one that has given me the most trouble. So especially with this topic we're about to talk about here today, this one that I'm looking at, or this is one where I get the most trouble. So y'all just make sure you follow me in more than one place, just in case. All right, just in case anything goes crazy. So let's get into this topic. Our current president, Joe Biden, I think I can say his name. It's the current president, Joe Biden. Someone said, yes, that is correct. Monsieur Quab Bill 2. Yes, you recognize me? I don't know how, but I'm glad you did. Yes, I did. So anyway, yes, backup account. Brittany just posted. That's my backup account on TikTok, by the way. Yeah, so we got the backup. And we also got YouTube. So just in case the backup doesn't work, they might just decide, Dre, you can't use the backup either. So anyway, with all that stuff, those things, what we're going to get into here today, President. And by the way, I'm going to take all questions and comments at the end of this stream. So you got questions and comments, just hold them to the end. If you're on TikTok, you might want to wait till I'm finished with everything, because if you post it now, I'm not going to see it as we go through. So for those who don't know me, hey, TJ over there on YouTube, and Carlina on YouTube is at Tennessee. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year pro athlete, author, 35 books. I'm 4 TEDx talks, created this brand called Work on Your Game. Our job over here is to help you perform at your highest level, do so consistently, and produce the most results that you want to produce, whether that is making money, whether you are trying to get followers on the internet. You should take it further than that. But you want to get bigger muscles, you want to get in shape, you want to be more disciplined, confident, get your mind in the right place, or a combination of all the above. That's what we help people do here at Work on Your Game. Yesterday, if you did not catch the live I did yesterday, I know some of you did, some of you did not. I was basically giving my entire background, how I started, where I came from, how we got here. So if you didn't catch that, you can find the video. The replay is on YouTube. So if you didn't catch that live yesterday, the replay is on YouTube. And that's where I just kind of broke down my whole story from, let's just say, the last 20 years, pretty much, from when I graduated college up until now. So getting into the topic here today, which is Joe Biden pardons his son, Hunter Biden. And most of you probably have heard about this. If you use social media, of course, you heard about it, because this is what people have been talking about for the last maybe 24 to 48 hours. And I have 9 points I want to get to here. So I got to be disciplined, make sure I get through this material in, let's say, the next 30 to 45 minutes. And then we have time for commentary. I tell myself that each time. Sometimes I go over. So the discipline here today is make sure I don't go over. So first point is this. As a father, Joe Biden doing what he did, would I have done this? Actually, let me ask the question. Any of you who is a father, any of you who's a male who has kids, would you have done this for your kid? Would you have pardoned your kid? Take the politics out of it. If you had the power, if you knew your kid they went to court and they got found guilty of a crime. Appreciate that, TJ. Thank you for the super chat over on YouTube. So if you're a father, would you have pardoned your kid? Yes or no? That's my question. Any of you listen to this, would you have pardoned your child? If you knew your kid went to court and got found guilty of a crime and they're about to get, it's coming up that they're going to get sentenced for the crime, would you have pardoned your child? And again, take the politics out of it. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, whether you voted for Biden, you didn't vote for Biden, you're a Trump supporter, MAGA, whatever, would you have pardoned your child? My answer is yes. I would have pardoned my child. I would have pardoned my child. And again, I'm not a Joe Biden fan. I don't think Joe Biden really has that many fans, but he is president, and he saw that his son was found guilty of a crime and he's about to be sentenced for the crime. He had the power to pardon his child. I would have did the same thing on a personal level. Again, who would not have pardoned their child if you had the power to do so? Regardless of that, you don't have to be president, but just say you had the power to pardon your child. I think most people probably would have done that. So I ain't mad at Joe Biden on that level. On a parent-child level, I'm not mad at Joe Biden using his power to help his kid out. And y'all need to understand that in other areas of life, not just at the presidency, because there's only one president, but other areas of life, if someone is, for example, if you're a cop or a sheriff in town and your kid does something bad and you can do something to kind of make that crime go away, make that thing go away before it becomes an issue, that happens all the time. If you're a principal or you have a high rank at a school and your kid goes to the school and your kid does something bad and you could somehow, some way kind of make it lesser or make them get less of a penalty than what they should get if they weren't your kid. People do that all the time. This is normal behavior. Some of you may not like the fact this is normal behavior, but we can't act like this is not human nature. People do this all the time. I remember when you ever watched The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So you remember the dad in the movie, Uncle Phil. I remember there was times where like Will and Carlton would get in trouble, and Uncle Phil, because he was a judge and he had some power, he could kind of make some things go away. He could fix problems for his kids and his nephew in ways that other people couldn't fix problems. This happens in life. I guess we call it nepotism, that you help out your family just because they're family. And this is a normal part of life. Again, whether you have been maybe some of you have been on the wrong end of it. Maybe you had an issue or somebody who was related to the right person did something bad and you wanted them to get in trouble and they didn't get in trouble because of who they were connected to and you're pissed off about it. Or you've been on the other side where you were the person who got lucky because you knew somebody who knew somebody, or you knew somebody who had power. This is just a game, folks. All right, this is what I'm saying. This is just a game. And we have to accept that this is part of human nature. I'm not even making an argument as to whether it's right or wrong. It's just what it is. So on a personal level, all of us would do this. Now let's move on. Point number 2. Here's the but. However, Joe Biden and the White House repeatedly said this year, even they've been saying this because the whole case with Hunter Biden just all happened over. The stuff happened over years, but all the stuff started to come to a head in 2024. Joe Biden himself said out of his mouth that he would not pardon his child. He said that. He said, I will not pardon. They kept asking him about it while the whole things were happening. This is when he was still actively doing his thing presidentially, and he would do press conferences. And he's done less and less over the months. But he said, I am not going to pardon my son. He said that, like literally said that, I will not pardon. Now, I thought it was Megyn Kelly I was listening to the other day, and what I think Joe Biden should have done is what most politicians do when they get asked a question that they don't really want to answer, was a question that he kind of should have avoided. The politicians are usually pretty good at avoiding questions that they don't want to answer. Trump does it. Kamala did it. Obama did it. Clinton did it. Biden is good at it. He's been doing it for years. He's been in politics for 50 years, damn near. They know how to avoid questions that they don't want to answer. So when people were asking him, what are you going to do if your son gets found, on the wrong side of this case? He could have just said, well, I'm not going to answer questions about hypotheticals, or we'll cross that bridge when we get there. He could have avoided the question, but he answered it, and he said, I'm not going to pardon my kid. And then he pardoned his kid. So he basically put himself in that position by saying he wasn't going to do it. His press secretary was saying they're not going to do it. The White House kept putting out statements saying they're not going to do it. And then they did it. So Joe Biden lied. He lied to us. He said, we're not going to do it. And they did it. Right? So nobody can dispute that. He lied. He said, we're not going to. And then he did it. And at the same time, the mainstream media were coming out and defending Joe Biden, because the whole thing with Joe Biden, and they do this with every, especially on people on the left, especially since Trump has been around, is that they have this frame that they put around this person to make it seem like they are morally superior, especially comparing them to Donald Trump. So they're like, well, Joe Biden's whole thing is that this guy's just an upstanding guy. He's a great family guy. Thank you for that heart, whoever that was, MAGA Monica. I like that name, MAGA Monica. So thank you for that heart over there on TikTok. He's an upstanding guy. He's a family guy. He's a guy of integrity, and he's an American all the way to the end. And he's served the country for so many years. He's just this great, upstanding, morally superior guy, especially when you compare him to the alternative, which is Donald Trump. That's been their whole frame around Joe Biden. Whether you agree with it, believe it or not, that's been the frame. That's been the story. And when he came out over the summer and he was saying, I'm not going to pardon. I'm going to let the legal process play out. I'm not going to get myself involved in that. My son is going to stand on his own, however he was saying it. And the mainstream media was co-signing this. Like, look at Joe Biden, such a great guy. He's not going to get involved. He's not all nasty and down low like Trump and doing all these things to help his friends out and help his billionaire friends. People keep saying about Trump, well, he's just a billionaire. He's just only helping billionaires. And they said that about Trump. That was the narrative. And Joe Biden's just this great guy who doesn't do any of these bad things. The mainstream media said this. And now he pardons his son. So what's the mainstream media saying? Now, I didn't hear everything that they said, but I saw that on The View. I know The View, which is, there's a reason why the show is called The View. I remember Donald Trump Jr., his son, was on The View like many years ago. I think this is when Trump was still in his first term. So this is maybe like 2019, 2020, something like that. And Donald Trump Jr. was on The View, and he was promoting his new book. And the interview was interesting because I hadn't never really heard Trump Jr. talk before, but he actually sounded more intelligent than I presumed he would be. And I went and read his book, and his book actually wasn't that bad. And then after that interview on The View, he did a different interview, and I listened to that one, and they asked him about being on The View. And you think about it, Donald Trump Jr. on The View, they were attacking him, right? And one of the things that he said that made me laugh, and I always remember, he said, well, the show is called The View. All right, there's one view. And he was 100% correct. The show is called The View because they have one perspective and you can't have a different perspective. So with this Hunter Biden thing yesterday on The View, Whoopi Goldberg is all like, well, there was one woman on there who was saying exactly what I just said. Like, Joe Biden said he wasn't going to pardon, and he pardoned. And then Whoopi Goldberg tried to kind of like act like that didn't happen and say, well, when you compare it to someone like Trump, who is not doing drugs and not doing these other things, and he's a different type of person, it's a different situation. She was kind of saying a whole bunch of nothing. It was a big word salad because she's trying to keep playing her position and stand on this view and she's the person who runs the show pretty much. And that's what it was like. The mainstream media is tripping all over themselves trying to figure out ways to make this sound like it's okay. And the other way that they're talking about it is, oh, well, now, Joe Biden has had all these tragedies in his family. He served the country for so many years, and he wants to help his son out who wouldn't help their son out. And Trump's a bad guy, and Trump's going to do bad things. He's already done bad things, so that balances it out. And hey, guess what? This makes MAGA upset, and it makes Republicans upset, so that makes it all good. See, these are all ways of talking around the actual truth of the thing, which is he said, I'm not going to pardon. And he pardoned. All right. Nobody, even if you're a staunch Democrat, even if you hate Donald Trump, even if you're a big Joe Biden fan, if you were been to his house, you cannot deny that he said one thing, he did a different thing. Nobody can deny that. And I don't think there's anyone, I can't see all your comments while you all are talking, but nobody can say that didn't happen. Now, with all that being said, let's continue, because his whole thing, again, his whole reputation by the mainstream media is not so much out of his own mouth, but the mainstream media has said Joe Biden is just the the statue of integrity and patriotism and serving the country, and he just went against what he said he wasn't going to do. Nobody can deny that. Moving on. Donald Trump is going to be president in about a month or two, a little over a month. When Donald Trump becomes president and he decides to use his presidential powers to do things that are similar to what Joe Biden just did, we shouldn't hear any complaining. Everybody agree with this? Just give me a yes or a no if you agree with it. When Donald Trump becomes president and he pardons somebody, when Donald Trump becomes president and he pardons somebody, let's say in his family, or some people are talking about how he did his, I think his, what was it, his father-in-law or something like that? Somebody connected to somebody. When he does stuff like that, there shouldn't be any complaining, right? This is fair game now. If this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. Now, people are drawing these equivalencies. Well, the Supreme Court allowed Trump to do this, and Trump did this in his first term, and this happened over here. So people are basically saying this is just a trade-off. Okay, fine. If that's the trade-off, fine. If that's the trade-off, Donald Trump had 2016 to 2020, one term. He gets two terms. So Donald Trump's on his second term. Joe Biden only had one term. So the trade-off, if this is what we're doing, then Trump's going to get to do what he wants because, I mean, he ain't running for election again. He only got these 4 years and there's a wrap. Oh, and by the way, in about 33 days is going to be January 6, 2025. There are some people still incarcerated behind January 6, 2021. Would this make it okay? Let me ask the question to the audience. Would it make it okay for Trump to pardon all those people? Even the ones who are not locked up, but they have something on their record because of it. Can he, I don't know even know if that's part of what he can do, but the people who are locked up specifically, is it okay if he does that? Is it fair game? If he pardons everybody and lets them all out and gets them all out of incarceration from January 6th? I would say yes. Someone said he could be vice president. I doubt it. TJ, I think it's pretty much over for that. I think this is fair game. And I think it's something that he's probably going to have some people telling him to do. Who knows if he'll actually do it? But if Trump comes in and he starts doing his thing and pardons everybody from January 6th, boom. And I can't remember who I heard say this yesterday. They used the phrase. Actually, it was Mr. I don't know if I can say his name, but I'll try. Mr. Shapiro from the Daily Wire. That guy. I think his name is okay to say. So when I heard Ben Shapiro say this, he put like this 20-minute video out on X yesterday. And he was saying this. He was saying, but when you get involved in this stuff, you break it, you bought it. That was the phrase that he used, which is, those of you who don't know that phrase, that's a phrase from like if you went into a retail store back in the day and you touched something, some item that you weren't trying to buy, but you touched it and you knocked it down and it broke. Now you got to pay for it. So they call it, you break it, you bought it. And what Ben was saying was, okay, now that Joe Biden has done this, nobody can complain. And a month or two, when Trump comes in and he starts pardoning people that people are mad that he's pardoning because Joe Biden just broke the seal by doing this. Okay, then nobody can be mad when Donald Trump does the exact same thing and takes it even further. So I think that Donald Trump would very much engage and excite his base if he pardoned everybody from January 6th when he becomes president. If he did that like immediately when he jumps in, I think that would excite a whole lot of people. And when I say excite doesn't necessarily mean positive. I think some people would be happy and a lot of people would be really upset. And we'll be talking about that on live. If he absolutely does that, absolutely we'll be talking about it if he does that. But Joe Biden is setting the precedent here. And it's not even that Joe Biden had to do this in order for Trump to have the leverage to do that, because he could do it anyway because he's the president. However, the fact that Joe Biden just did this now in early December and Trump is about to become president in less than 2 months, it's going to be fresh on people's minds. So anything that Trump did in his first term from 2016 to 2020, a lot of it people either didn't know about when it happened or forgot about, or it doesn't seem that interesting just because it was so far away. The distance between the events matters. So the distance between the events is going to make it fresh on people's minds what Joe Biden just did for his son, because what else has Joe Biden done noteworthy in the year 2024? We haven't really heard from Joe Biden. He did the debate, didn't look good in the debate. That was in late June, early July. Here we are, December. We haven't really heard anything. And then he did the only garbage I see are his supporters. That was the second thing we heard from Joe Biden. And this is the third thing. In the last 6 months, there's basically 3 times we heard from Joe Biden. The debate, the calling Trump supporters garbage, and now this. And that matters, because if he was doing 100 things every month, then each thing will be diminished in importance because it's competing against all the other things. But when you only do a few things, people only notice those few, and that matters a lot. That's going to matter a lot to how this gets perceived when Trump steps in and does his thing. But there's a whole other angle to this that we have to get to that I haven't even gotten to yet. Before I even get to that, let me ask this question. And I'm not making this one about the Democrats or the Republicans, about Biden or Trump individually, but let me just ask the question. Is this, thank you, WTF Global News, appreciate it. Is this corruption? Is what we're talking about here a reflection of corruption? And again, I'm talking either side. Joe Biden, the Democratic side or Democratic person pardoning their family members for something that clearly they did. And if Donald Trump comes in and he decides, any of you who's an anti-Trump person, and you feel like the January 6th people should never get out, they should stay in there forever, and he comes in and he decides to start pardoning them, is this a reflection of corruption? Is this a reflection of people who have power being able to do the things that they want to do, whereas people who don't have power, you basically get subjected to the people who have power? Is that a reflection of this? If you call that corruption, is that a reflection of corruption? My answer is, let me wait for y'all to answer the question. Is this corruption? People with power can do what they want, and they can set things up for themselves to win. But if you don't have the power that they have, you're pretty much subject to whatever is going to happen. And if you ain't got any power, hey, too bad. Sucks for you. Is that a reflection of corruption? The answer is yes. Yeah, I see you over there, TJ, on YouTube. And D. Aberdeen said, no, you don't say it as corruption. So I see some yeses, I see some nos. I would say this is a reflection of corruption. I told you, don't trust or lean on the government. You don't want to trust the government. I was talking about this before the election. You do not want to trust or lean on the government. And I don't mean any individual person in the government. I just mean the government, period. Why? Because the United States government, certain people have power. They can do certain things to make things happen the way they want them to happen. And you, without the power, you don't have the power to do the same things that they do. So justice is allegedly supposed to be blind, but we know it's not blind, because depending on who you are and who you're connected to and who you know, there are certain things you'll be able to get away with and certain things you can't get away with based on where you're at. And you said it is what it is. Yes, it is. And what it is corruption. That's what it is. It's corruption. It's people with power using what they have to get what they want. And if we're talking about the government, if we're talking about everyday life, we just call that human nature. But when we put these people in the government and they're allegedly supposed to be serving us, but it seems like they're serving themselves, that is corrupt. That's what it is. This is corruption. And again, this is the reason why I'm telling you all, this shouldn't be new to any of you, that you should not lean on or trust the government. All right. They will do what they want to do. And if you are not on the inside, you might end up being subject to the corruption. This is why you don't want to get too close to it. Don't fly too close to the sun unless you happen to be with the right people. If everybody understands what I'm saying, this is part of the game. Okay. So this shouldn't be new to any of you. And again, I'm not even mad at it. I'm not mad at it because Trump's going to do it for his people and Biden is doing it for his people. And by the way, this happens in government every day. This is just the thing we're talking about, but this happens every day in government. This is just the thing that we know about. There's a whole bunch of things that go on that if I was a person who studied what happened in DC politics, there'd be a ton of things to talk about that most of you wouldn't know anything about because it doesn't make it to the mainstream. I'm usually talking about things that most of you have an opinion on because we know about it. But this thing's happening in government every single day. And when we get to talking about Trump's cabinet appointments, I know many of you have asked me to talk about that. I'm going to just go down a list once we get clear on who these people are. Each person is going to be because you get people dropping out and coming in, et cetera. When we get to talking about that, and again, I got to be careful talking around that topic with certain names and stuff because I was mentioning some names last week or the week before that, and TikTok was like, be careful. So I got to be careful how I talk about those. But when we get to talking about that, those people are talking about a lot of things that are reflective of that, of the internal corruption that happens in the government, period, on either side of the aisle. And again, when they come in, because they're with Trump, people are going to call them corrupt. And when they'll come in, they're going to say, well, the government itself is corrupt. And you got all this back and forth. And this is just the way they keep people occupied, people like us, occupied and distracted from what's really going on. And it might not even be the real game that's happening. But let's move on, because there's a whole other side to this conversation that we need to talk about that not many are talking about. And there's a reason why many people are not talking about it. But I'm going to bring it up right here. 1989. In 1989, this video is on social media. Y'all can find it. You might have seen it on TikTok or X if you are an active user. Joe Biden was standing in front of, looked like he was standing in Congress. I don't know whether he was in the Senate or he was in the House of Representatives. Doesn't matter. He was speaking in Congress and he said, we must hold these people who are dealing in narcotics accountable. That is what he said. And not only did he say we need to hold the dealers accountable, the people who are selling the drugs, we got to hold the users accountable. This came out of Joe Biden's mouth in 1989. He said we got to hold the users accountable. In other words, Joe Biden was promoting that the drug users get incarcerated. Yeah, K.O. Hardy, I'm going to get to that in a second. I'm not done. Let me continue. It's all in my notes. We got to hold these people accountable. That's what Joe Biden said. Joe Biden supported a bill that came out in 1994. Many of you have heard of this. When Joe Biden came up for president in the 2020 election cycle, this was the main thing getting held up against him, especially by the black community. That Joe Biden supported a bill in 1994 that is known as the crime bill. That wasn't the actual name of it, but it's colloquially known as the crime bill. Joe Biden said on the floor of the Senate, you can find the video. He is saying, and this, wait, but before I even get to that, let's understand why I'm even saying this, because his son, who he just pardoned, what some of the part of the reason why his son was on in the court period in front of a judge, in front of a jury, is because of drug charges. All right, drugs were part of the deal when it came to his son. So I'm saying I got to make sure y'all understand that. So the Hunter Biden thing was a lot of things. Part of it was drug use, that Hunter Biden was using drugs openly. And I mean, is that a crime to use drugs? I don't know. Is it a crime to use drugs? I don't know. Whatever it is, he was using drugs and he was taking pictures of himself and videos of himself while doing it. And he put it all on his computer and people found a computer. And this was so when you heard of the Hunter Biden laptop, oh yeah, I got to make sure I bring this up before I go further. The Hunter Biden laptop story was the thing in the 2020 election when Trump was running against Biden. And the thing is, the New York Post, not the New York Times, but the New York Post, they're the ones who pretty much had the story. They had the story of, hey, there's this laptop that belonged to Hunter Biden, allegedly, and it has all these things on it that are basically incriminating of Hunter Biden. And you can connect that to his dad, Joe Biden, who was running for president. And what happened is the mainstream media, and again, nobody can challenge this. The mainstream media, in conjunction with a lot of social medias, such as specifically Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, y'all were the ones most guilty of this. They colluded to make sure that news did not get out. If you went on Google in the 2020 election cycle and you tried to find the news of the Hunter Biden laptop, you could not find it. You looked on TikTok, not TikTok, on Twitter back then. Now it's called X. On Twitter, they basically didn't let you find it. You couldn't find it. On Facebook, you couldn't find it. And that story would have made Joe Biden look very bad. And it would have hurt his chances of winning the 2020 election, meaning I talk about that anymore. So all of this laptop and Joe Biden's son thing played a big role in Joe Biden's ability to actually win that 2020 election, which was a closely contested election, which we already know. It took months before we even knew who won the election. I'm saying all that to make sure you all understand that the Hunter Biden situation, it had something to do with drugs. Now back to what I was saying. 1994, Joe Biden supports the crime bill. The crime bill says we want a mandatory minimum of 5 years incarceration for anyone caught with this much of a narcotic, like enough to fit in between your thumb and your forefinger. You have this much of the narcotic, specifically crack, 5 years. This is what Joe Biden said. And again, this is on video. Nobody can question this. He's on video speaking in Congress saying, you get caught with this much, and he was holding it in his hand. I don't know if it was what he was holding was actual crack, but he was holding something in his hand. He said, if you have this much, we want to put you in jail for a minimum of 5 years, no probation. All right, that was Joe Biden out of his own mouth. Now, let me say something here. As a black man who comes from the city, I come from the city of Philadelphia, live in Miami, Florida. I do not like playing the racial politics game. I think a lot of people, what's the word? They abuse it these days. I call these people race hustlers. I believe that they abuse it. They go back and pull stuff out of history and they try to extrapolate it into what's happening now. And they leverage that for their own personal gain, whether it's to get followers on the internet or clicks or likes or even to do business. I call these people race hustlers. And I don't agree generally with what a lot of them do. I did a whole live on this a couple weeks ago. At the same time, here's where they're actually right. Here is where they're correct. And those of you who are not black who are listening to this, you need to understand this, because this is a point on which I actually agree with them. because the drug, the plant that becomes crack, is also a powder known as cocaine. And we know that in the United States of America, here's what we know. There are some theories and stories out there about what happened in the 80s and who was involved in intelligence agencies. I'm not going to get into the depths of that because some of those are theories that haven't technically been proven. But here's what we do know for sure. We know for sure that if a person was caught using or selling the powder form of the drug, you got this much of a penalty. But if you were caught using or selling the crack form of the drug, the hard form of the drug, you got this much penalty. And we know that the hard form of the drug was much more prevalent in the inner cities where Black people were heavily populated and the powder drug was in the suburban areas where it was more white people. That's an absolute fact. Nobody can deny that. All right. That is absolutely what happened. And the United States can be held accountable for that. So when you hear the people who I call race hustlers saying this, again, even though I call them race hustlers and I use it as somewhat of a compliment, as a pejorative, it doesn't mean I disagree with everything that they say. They actually do have some good points. On this point, they are correct. On this one right here, they're right. That the cocaine powder, you got this much of a penalty for selling it, using it, having it, whatever. But if you had crack, it was all the way up here. And this is what Joe Biden was talking about in 1994, the crime bill. Mandatory minimum 5 years. So you got this much. So enough to use, basically. Now, whether you were using it, selling it, whatever. But if you had it, period, 5 years in jail. No probation, which means you have to do the 5 years. And it was more to this. He said, and mind you, he's saying these things because he's trying to sell other people in Congress to support this, because you got to get a certain number of votes to make this into a law. So the crime bill is only a bill until the president signs it into law. So the only way the bill even gets to the president's desk is that you had to get enough people in Congress to be okay with it. So not everybody was okay with it, but he had to get enough people to be okay. So you give a speech to basically sell your idea to everybody else. That's what he was doing. So when he was selling his idea, and other people supported it, but he was one of the main people to support this idea, he says, we want a mandatory minimum 5 years. The government can take everything you own. It can take your house. It can take any money that you have, not only the money that you made from selling, but whatever you have. If you have a car, we'll take that. You have a house, we're going to take that. If you have any other money, and I got all right, so they said my live visibility got restricted. I don't know what I said. But anyway, so TikTok just gave me a restriction. I don't know what I said. They gave me a restriction. But Joe Biden is promoting. Let's just say that. So before I go any further than what he was saying. And he was just selling on why this is such a great idea. And they got the bill passed. The bill becomes law because it gets signed into law by the president. And many Black people, many Black Americans got incarcerated behind that law, because that bill that became a law was targeted towards, again, he wasn't holding powder. He was holding the hard form, the crack form. And who was that? Who was using that? That wasn't being used in the suburban areas. I'm not saying nobody was using it that's white. What I'm saying is the area where that was most prevalent was in the hood, was in the ghettos, in the Black communities. Again, that's not even challengeable. That's not even questionable. And the laws were much more strict for them than for the exact. Again, y'all gotta understand, it's the exact same plant. It's the same plant. It's just different forms of the same plant. So in this form, you get this, but in this form, you get that. What's the difference? It's the same drug. But the story that was told to us by the United States government was that the crack form is much more potent, it's much more strong, and is much more deadly, is much more hurtful to the human system. So this is why we got to have stronger laws for that form versus this form. That sounds good. But at the same time, here's what they didn't tell you, is what I just told you, that, this form that's so much hurtful, so bad, only these people are using it. But this form that seems to be, it's bad, but it's not as bad, only these people are using it. But see, they didn't say that part. But all of you, it's 2024. All of you should understand that. All of you should understand that. And here's the reason why this matters. The reason why this matters is because a mandatory 5 years in 1994, well, that was 30 years ago. You be out and living now, but y'all got to understand that when a family gets broken, the family's broken. There's a book called The New Jim Crow, written by Michelle Alexander. Any of you read that book, heard of it, know the author? Now, Michelle Alexander's book, I read this book probably 10 years ago, maybe 2013. And the book is all about what she's talking about is incarceration. She's talking about mass incarceration and how it targets Black people and how it hurts the Black community. And when I read the book, there are some things that she left out of her argument that I didn't quite understand. She had left out until I heard other people talking about it. So the book itself has some things in it that are questionable, but the idea, the general concept of what she was writing about was accurate. Now, Miss Alexander is a little bit of a race hustler, got to be honest. But at the same time, there were some things in there that were actually true. Because here's what happens. And here's what y'all got to understand, especially those of you who are not from the Black community. You still need to understand this, even if you're not Black, is that if someone gets incarcerated for a drug offense and is on your record, you go to jail, whether you get a year, you get 5, you get 10, you get 20. First of all, that's on your record forever. All right. And all of you, any of you ever filled out a job application, you know there's a question on there. Have you ever been convicted of whatever? And if the answer is yes, the chances of you getting called back for that job are slim to none. Secondly, if you ever try to get an apartment, you try to get a lease, you have to fill out a document and they ask you the same question. Have you ever been convicted? And if the answer is yes, the chances of you getting on that lease document are slim to none. So if you can't go get a job after you get out of jail, so you did your year or two, it's 10 years later. You got to mark yes every time for the rest of your life, because even if you say no, then they do the background check. Turns out that all right, now you're not getting the job. Now you're not getting the apartment. Same situation. So hard for you to get a job, hard for you to live somewhere. And what if you have a child already? What if you had a wife, but you went away, you got incarcerated, you came back. Now your kid's 3 years older. Your wife waited for you. Now you want to move back into the apartment with them, but they got to put your name on the lease because you're an adult. You got to put your name on the lease. As soon as they do the background check on you, nope, you can't move into the house. See, this is how broken families and broken communities happen because of laws like what got signed into, because of bills that got signed into law back in 1994. This has broken the Black community in many ways. And in 2020, when Joe Biden was running for president, this is what a lot of Black people were saying about him. Like, hey, all right, you all got whatever you feel about Trump, fine. At the same time, don't go dancing in the streets over this guy. Look what he did. And that's a legitimate point, a very legitimate point about Joe Biden. And if you ask me, if I'm comparing what you want to say about Trump to what you want to say about Biden, which one had more impact on the Black community? I would say the bill. That's what I would say. What did Trump do? What did Trump do? They said that, oh, well, he had lawsuits for discriminating against people trying to move into his buildings. Now, how many of you ever tried to move into the Trump Tower? I never tried to move into a Trump Tower. So that's what you holding against him, is that he was discriminating against people trying to move into one of his buildings. Again, how many of you ever tried to move into a Trump building? But this thing that Biden supported, this affected people that you probably know, people in your own family, people in your own community. And when you get incarcerated, there's a reason why I brought up Michelle Alexander's book. It's called The New Jim Crow. If you haven't read the book, you should read it. Even though, again, there's some things in there that are questionable. If you are a critical thinker, you should still read the book so you can understand the perspective, because that book was very influential. So you should understand what people are reading. In that book, she explained how once you are in the system, and some of you already understand this even if you didn't read the book, once you're in the system, it's hard to get out of it. You're in it. You can't get a job. You can't get an apartment. You can't move back in with your own family. So now you can't even raise your own kids. So when you see a lot of kids coming up in single families, one of the reasons is this. And we can all go back. Let's be clear. All right. We can all go back and let's be clear, because you can say, well, okay, I get it, Dre, that if you end up in the system, then that's a bad thing. But don't people understand that you're not supposed to be selling drugs in the first place? All right. Selling drugs is not a good idea. All right. It's a crime. It's criminal activity. You know, if you sell drugs, you might end up getting incarcerated. You might end up losing your life. You might end up losing your freedom. All right. Everyone logically understands that. At the same time, here's where I'm going to throw out a theory. And any of you Black folks know, y'all can co-sign this in the comments, that I'm going to throw out a theory right here that many people believe, again, this is just a theory, TikTok, I'm not stating this as fact, so don't give me another restriction, that certain drugs were inserted into certain communities for a certain reason. Is that fair enough to say? Everybody get what I'm saying? Certain drugs in certain forms were inserted into certain communities in a certain form for a certain reason. And once they got inserted into those communities, then they came along and said, oh, hey, everybody, look how bad this drug is. Hey, look how much it hurts people. Hey, we got to do something about this. You know what? We got to fight. We got to do the war on drugs, right? Wasn't that the thing in the 80s and 90s, the war on drugs? So you did a war on drugs. Well, what drug were they doing a war on? It was a certain form of drug that was prevalent in a certain type of community that was being used and sold by a certain type of person. All right, again, that's a theory, but that's like a theory with a wink, wink. All of you know exactly what I mean. And that one right there, that ain't it. I agree with the race hustlers on that one. So race hustlers, I'm giving you a point here. Okay, so don't think I'm always trashing the race hustlers. All right, that happened. And I'm saying all that to say this. Now Joe Biden's son has a drug issue, but he pardoned him. Now, what about, and I saw people saying this on social media yesterday. Okay, what about all the black folks who are still, because y'all got to understand that the bill became law there, and it's not as prevalent today, people going into that game, because the world is different now. Now there are cameras everywhere. People are filming themselves. It's much harder to do those kind of things these days because you basically are exposing yourself as soon as you walk out the house, as opposed to back in the 80s and the 90s. But there are people who are still getting incarcerated behind these laws. There are people who are still getting incarcerated now, still in jail today and getting out today based on the law that got signed in back in 1994. And a lot of them are from a certain community. And people are like, all right, well, how about Joe Biden just pardon all the people locked up right now behind that bill that he co-signed? If you're going to do it for your son, do it for everybody else. Now, of course, that's not going to happen, but it's a legitimate point. That is a legitimate point. And if you're a Democrat or you're anti-Trump, this is a legitimate point that has to be addressed because neither side is perfect. So the question that I have with all this, I don't know how many of you are in here listening, but black Democrats who are really happy when Biden won in 2020 and are mad that Trump won in 2024, are you celebrating that Biden pardoned his son just because Republicans get mad about it, or because Joe Biden gets to kind of give his last middle finger to everybody and the Republicans before he leaves office? You're celebrating him pardoning his son, but what about the point that I just made? What about that? How, if you're a black Democrat, how can you be happy he pardoned his son? What about everybody else whose name that you don't know, who doesn't have a father with some political power? What about them? Because he co-signed that bill about drug use and drug selling. But his son, I don't know if he sold anything, but he was using it, definitely. Now he gets pardoned, and now it's okay. And that just gives me this like that question mark emoji, that questioning emoji. You know that emoji where the guy's like this? All right, that's what I'm looking at you, like black Democrats who are celebrating Joe Biden. I'm just wondering. You tell me what I got wrong here. So let's move on. The Joe Biden, last point that I'm going to make here, and then I'll recap and we'll take questions. Someone said, TJ said, I think it's more of an FU to the Dems themselves. Maybe, possibly. But so Joe Biden's Department of Justice, he is in charge of the Department of Justice. He doesn't, I'm not saying he's reading every document that they're writing, but Donald Trump had 4 court cases against him just this year, right? As soon as he announced that he was going to run for president again, they pulled the cases out. So they got the fraud case in New York about the documentation with the prostitution thing. Then they got what was the other thing that happened in New York? The SA case where he was found adjudicated SA. Then you had the RICO case in the state of Georgia. Then you had the documents case in the state of Florida. The documents case is pretty much done. I think the RICO case is going to fall apart. And we'll see what happens with the 2 cases in New York. But Joe Biden could have stopped any one of those if he wanted to. Yeah, TJ, you're right. Fake. He could have stopped any one of those if he wanted to. Now, again, it's not like he was pushing a button like, go do that, do that, do that. But he could have stopped any one of those if he wanted to, right? And all of those cases were designed for one reason. It was to stop Donald Trump from even running for president. The whole point was to let him not even run. Because remember when it was one of those cases that happened when he got charged, there were states that were trying to say, well, we're going to remove his name from the ballot so he can't even be an option for people to vote for him. They tried to do that. I believe it was the state of Colorado tried to do that, but then the higher court said, no, you can't do that. The whole point was to not even let him run, let alone let him win. He ended up winning anyway. All right. So the whole thing failed. The whole point, though, is Joe Biden as president could have stopped any of those cases from happening in the first place, but he didn't. He let that happen. So anyone making it seem like this is, oh, Joe Biden's just this upstanding guy who's just defending democracy. And, Democrats have been saying about Trump for the last 10 years. I'm going to defend democracy and defend the Constitution and uphold the rule of law, et cetera. Same thing Kamala was saying during her campaign. Again, they could have stopped Trump. They could have not stopped Trump, but stopped the cases against him. None of those cases would have happened if Joe Biden and or Kamala Harris would have said, no, these are not happening. I'm not saying they would have had to say it publicly to where we heard it, but they could have talked to whoever they talked to and said, no, you're not doing it. We're going to let them run and we're going to face them fair and square and let's see what happens. They could have done that. And I think the fact that we can see that those cases against Trump in 2024, all four of them, I think that galvanized a bunch of people to support him because people can see what was happening now. People can see through the stuff now, whereas people couldn't see through it as well in 2016 or 2020, but they definitely can see through it now. So that game doesn't work anymore. This is the reason why mainstream media is in trouble. But let's recap what I said, and then we'll take questions. You got a question or comment, get it ready. I'll take it in a second. So Joe Biden pardons his son. First point is I would have done it too. All right, if I'm president and my son is in some issue and I can either let him get incarcerated or I can pardon him, I'll probably pardon him too. Just as a parent, I would have pardoned him. At the same time, Joe Biden said he wasn't going to do that, and then he actually did it. So he went back on his own word. And again, his whole reputation is about him being a man of integrity and patriotism. Well, he kind of threw dirt on that by doing this. Number three, no complaining when Trump does it. Just don't complain when Trump starts pardoning people or does some things just using his powers, as people have already claimed he's going to do anyway. Then look, your guy did it. If you're anti-Trump, you can't say anything. And number four, if he pardons the January 6 people, it's going to get a lot of people excited. That'll create a lot of material for someone like me to talk about if and when it happens. So I look forward to that if it does happen. Number five, is all this a form of corruption? Yes, it is. All right. This is the government using their power to do things for themselves and their friends they wouldn't do for everyday people. That is corruption. That's what it is. 1989, rather. Joe Biden said we got to hold drug people, anybody involved in drugs, accountable. He said he not only said the dealers, but the users. And he supported the 1994 crime bill, mandatory minimums. Government can confiscate stuff, and many black people are incarcerated behind this. Again, that's not a theory, that's a fact. And there are people still incarcerated to this day behind this. And there are black Democrats who are celebrating that Joe Biden pardoned his son. Well, what about the people that went to jail behind the things that Joe Biden supported? That part you can't figure out. How does that make sense? And again, the Department of Justice during the last 4 years of this administration could have easily said, we're not doing any of that Trump stuff. If Joe Biden would have said, y'all ain't doing it. He said, just let him run. And if he wins, he wins. If he loses, he loses. It could have been a rematch between him and Trump end up being Harris, but could have been a rematch and they could have did it fair and square. He didn't stop it. He could have stopped it because he has the power to do so. He's the president. He didn't do it. All that being said, tomorrow, what I'm going to talk about, by the way, is I think we're going to get into this SA stuff because did y'all hear this story? Did y'all see the thing with Conor McGregor? Y'all know who Conor McGregor is? I got to be careful. I can even say his name. I guess I can. But the UFC fighter, Conor McGregor, over in Ireland, I believe the country he's from. Did y'all see that case that he got? So he had it was a civil case, not a criminal case, but he got a civil case of a woman accusing him of SA, and he lost the case last week. And it wasn't crazy like Trump when he lost his SA case. It was $88 million, which is a ridiculous sum. But Conor McGregor loses his case over in Ireland, and he has to pay, at least the last I heard, 250 euros, which is small compared to what Trump got. But did y'all see that case? So I'm going to talk about the SA madness. That's what we'll talk about. I think that's going to come tomorrow unless something else comes up. So TJ, I can't mention those two guys that you said there, the bald-headed guy who's a kickboxer. I can't mention those guys' names. I have been warned directly to not mention those guys' names. I can say it on this platform. The platform you're on, TJ, I can say their names, but this one over here that starts with the letter T, I can't say their names on this platform. I've been told I cannot say their names. It's all good. You can say their names in the comments. You can say what you did is you're cool to say it in the comments. You just can't. I can't say their names out loud. So anyway, let's take questions. I'm gonna start over on YouTube, and again, shout out to TJ for the super chat over on YouTube. And let me see. I addressed that. Maria said, since when do politicians give a F about anybody? No, fair point. That's a fair comment, Maria. I get it. And this is why I tell people don't trust the government. I mean, you can engage, you can say what you want, offer your opinions, but don't get too deep with them because you never know. If you're not on the right side of things, you might end up on the wrong side. D. Aberdeen said, I'm okay with him pardoning his son. Anybody would do the same. That's no different during Trump's first term where he provided. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And is that a reflection of corruption? Yes, it is, because everybody else can't do it. So that's the deal. You said we just have to join the party. Well, that means you had to get involved in politics, or somebody in your family would have to. And if you ain't got that, then I'll say stay away. So you either get all the way in or you stay away. That's what I tell people. All the way in or stay away. So I'm over on TikTok taking comments now. So if you got anything for Brittany, you see anything, just go ahead and pin it and let's get to it. So, and by the way, I do these lives Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. Jennifer said, why is it okay for Trump to pardon? And he said, I'm a hypocrite. You spelled the word hypocrite very wrongly, Jennifer, but I get your point. And no, I'm saying that they both do it. I'm saying every side does it. That's my whole point. That's what makes it corruption, is that they're all doing it to help their friends out, but the everyday citizen does not have that same access. That's what makes it corruption. And Rob said, laws are for little people. You know it and we know it. Rob, I agree with you. I agree with that. WTF Global said, if this had not happened in the timeline, we would still be in the dark about what we have found out. Yes, that's correct. I agree with that as well. Babo said, Trump pardoned Jared Kushner's dad and appointed him ambassador to France. I know. I'm agreeing. I agree with you. Again, if you're in, you have access to this stuff. And if you're out, you have none of this access. So this is my point here, is not about the Democrats or the Republicans. It's they all do it. That's my point. And that's why none of us, if you're not connected in any way, should get too excited about politics. I use it for content like I'm doing right here, but I don't get too excited about what either side does, because they all do what works for them. KO said, yes, I know. I talked about that probably a month or two ago. KO Hardy said, politics was not supposed to be a career. Yes, the way politics was initially designed was that people had their everyday lives and jobs and careers, and then they would gather every now and then to decide things, again, by the people and for the people, and then they would go back to their everyday lives. It expanded to the point that these people are doing these things, doing these political jobs as careers, and they're all gathered in one place. And this is why DC politics is what it is. When we say DC politics, we just mean people in there doing what works for them. And this is why the lobbyists can go there and lobby for their companies to get whatever they want. This is why Trump said, drain the swamp. That's what it became. These people who basically made a career out of being politicians, it was never supposed to be a job in the first place, or a career. It was supposed to be a job, not a career. Similar to if you're a parent and your kid is 8 years old and they ask you to coach the 8-year-old basketball team, you coach it. But then when your kid's not on the team anymore, you're not coaching anymore because your kid's not on the team. You move on and the next parent steps up. And that's what it's supposed to be. But it's turned into something completely different. And this is why Trump used that phrase, drain the swamp. It's a great visual for what has happened in Washington, D.C. And that applies to all politicians, not just the Democrat things, not just the Republican things, all of them. If you saw Trump's first term, and you notice how Harris used this against him a lot, was that all these people who worked in Trump's first administration didn't want to support him for the second administration. And Trump has gone out and explained that. He said that one of the reasons why all those people from my first administration don't mess with me is because I realized that they were DC politicians and I didn't want DC politicians. And if you listen to people talk about how it works in the government, when you first step in as president, there are so many things you have to do and deal with, and so many different people, you get overwhelmed by it. And Trump just had to, at some points, trust certain people just because of their profile, their backing, and the fact that they had already been vetted and they were all DC career guys. And when he went against the grain of DC career guys, they all just turned on him. And this is why so many people from his first administration went against him. And it seemed like that made Trump a bad guy. But it actually, to the everyday citizen, people said, well, that's actually a good thing because we don't like DC politicians. So all these DC people who don't like Trump was actually good for Trump, not bad for him. They thought it was bad, but it was actually good. JNR said Joe Biden pardoned his son for it. Yeah, well, I can agree with that. And because it's his son, on top of the fact that it's his son. JNR said they were going to give Hunter a life sentence. I don't know about that. JNR. A life sentence? I don't know about that. He might have had to do something very heinous for that. I think you're stretching it. Kenai said it's concerning that he pardoned him for all crimes against well, I get it that you're concerned, but what can you do about it? I mean, this is exactly what our point, what we've been talking about here today. Yes, Jesse, correct. Babo said Trump has a history of bigotry, corruption, and incompetency in running businesses. Well, people keep saying that, but he has a name for a reason. His name is a business, and you know it. So you got to also say that he has a history of success. So people repeat these things about Trump, all the negative stuff, but you don't repeat any of the positive stuff. The fact that you know his name is proof that he has success in business, because what else do you know him for? Someone said people are running to Mar-a-Lago to see Trump. Nobody ran to Delaware. Fair point. That's fair. That is fair. Brittany said Hunter is guilty of crimes against, and HC most has not been revealed. Probably. I am Tang said Trump didn't commit any. Well, we'll see. He got some court cases that are not quite completed. I think the last one is not complete, is the Georgia case, but I don't think that one's going to go anywhere. JNR said a policeman. No, he didn't. You have bad information, JNR. Nobody passed away on January 6th, and the police officer, the security person who passed away a couple of days later, it was from a unrelated issue. He had heart issues before January 6th, and he passed of the heart issues. It was not because of anything that happened that day. It wasn't from injuries sustained or anything like that. So you just have inaccurate information. Thank you for the gifts over on TikTok, those of you who've been sharing them. Let me see. TJ said, you're going back to work? Yeah, I'll be back here tomorrow, I'll be back here 8 a.m. Eastern. Yeah, the one person who passed away is the one who got shot, and she was on the Trump side. It wasn't any of security, which is correct. So Babo said, well, again, who's in charge? Who's in charge of the decision? It's not a vote. It's not a democratic process. It's whoever decides they're going to do it. JNR said crimes are weighted. Yes, I agree. You're right for that. You're right about that. WTF said, I'm from Florida. I'm all for Pam Bondi and Trump and DeSantis. Yeah, well, I like DeSantis. And I think Bondi's going to get in she's going to go in as AG, right? Is that where she's going to go? JNR said January 6th resulted. No, it didn't. I just told you that. No, it didn't. Let's see. I'm going through comments on TikTok. So if you got something on TikTok, go ahead and post it. Nick said, rules for thee, not for me. Yes, that's the thumbnail that I used on. They don't ask for a thumbnail. Well, they do ask for a thumbnail on TikTok, but I didn't change it. But on YouTube and Rumble, I did use that as a thumbnail. So if you go to YouTube, you'll see it. The exact phrase you just used is in the thumbnail. WTF says, in the report on the Biden laptop. Yes. Yeah, that laptop. Well, Hunter Biden was taking pictures of everything. He was documenting everything. So just a word of advice for all especially the males out there. If you're out there doing things and enjoying your life, don't record everything. And if you record it, delete it. Don't record everything. All right. There's some things you just got to keep to your memory. Don't record everything, and don't put it on your damn computer or on your phone. Those things can easily be hacked, confiscated, and now the whole world's going to know everything you were doing because you recorded everything. I record a lot of stuff, and I don't record everything. Yeah, Aiden, I get it. That was all there. It was all there. And that's the reason why he went to court. I mean, the system did what it was supposed to do, but Joe Biden had the power to pardon him. System did his job. So what you pointed out is correct. Traditional said the left didn't smother the story. Which story are you talking about? He said he pinned himself, admits it. All of that problem is nobody. I don't get what is reading these books, including the book. Yeah, that one I didn't read. Didn't go that deep with the ex-wife book. Rugg says that Dems weaponized this. Well, I agree with that. I mean, we saw that this year. Right? We saw that this year. Jennifer said, bro, you also love the poorly educated. What does that mean, Jennifer? I need context. And I do love the poorly educated. I love the poorly educated. I love the highly educated. I love anyone who's open to listening. And when you say poorly educated, can you define what you mean with that term? People throw that term around, educated and uneducated. I want to know what exactly you mean when you say that. Tennant said we're going to have a 32 count felon as the president. Yet talk about what happened with Biden is in the news. Tennant, I'm talking about it because that's the news. That's the current event that's happening. What's happening with Trump right now is newsworthy as much as this. I don't think anything. So I'm talking about this because this is the hot topic. So this is social media, and I do use whatever's happening in the news for garnering attention. But what is it about Trump that I should be talking about? Give me a good topic. I might talk about it. I like using Trump's name. Trump's name draws a lot of attention. So if you got something good, give it to me. I will use it. I appreciate it. Thank you in advance if you got something. So someone said, you can't blame Joe Biden for supporting a bill. The black. Okay, fair enough, Underground King. That's a good point. Good counterpoint. Underground King says that the black community wanted this at the time. And yes, there is a good counterpoint to that the black community did want it because there was a lot of degeneracy happening in our communities based on drug use, selling, etc. So you are right about that. And there are many people in the black community who supported it. Not everybody, but there are many people who did, because the people who were like everyday citizens who went to work every day and we wanted our kids to go outside and play. And then we saw that, then we would go and we would say, yeah, get these people off the streets. So fair point, Underground King. Thank you for sharing that. Money Beat say he was holding a quarter. Right. Yeah, that's what he said. He said a quarter size amount of this drug. That's what he said. A quarter size amount of this drug and it'll get you 5 years. Yes, good. Thank you, Money Beats, for that context. Yeah, let's get Dre to 10K likes, everybody. As Brittany said, thank you. I think it says 9.7. If you didn't make any issue about Trump and who he pardoned, again, I talked about that, Chelsea. What I said is the proximity and the recency biases that human beings have is what is making us talk about this right now, because this just happened 2 days ago. And when I do these lives, Chelsea, you might be new to me, but I talk about current events. This is the current event, is what's happening now. So if Trump goes and does something that gets people talking, trust me, everybody, I will use it. Trump's name draws more attention than Joe Biden's name. So if I was talking about Trump today, it'd be like 3 times more people watching me right now than if I talk about Joe Biden. So please, if any of you think that I'm just talking about Biden because I won't talk about Trump, you don't know who you're talking to. I would love Trump to do something so that I can talk about Trump, because Trump draws more attention than any of these people. So please, Donald Trump, go do something so I can talk about you. You get more attention than everybody. Will Lane, what's going on, my dude? Good to see you. Send me a DM, Will. I ain't talked to you in a minute. So let me see. TJ said Trump came in rich. Other politicians were enriched. Yes, fair point. And the lady that got, yes, yeah, no, you're right about that. TJ said you late the class. What class you got, TJ? Shout out to everybody who's late to class right now, or people who are in class but you're listening to me. I wish they had smartphones when I was in college. I would have just had my AirPods in. I would have been listening to something like this while the teacher was talking. But unfortunately, in my day, we had to actually listen to them talk. So Traditional said, do a talk about that. About what? When y'all say things like this and I don't know what you're referring to, I need the context, because by the time I read your comment, I don't know what you're talking about. So you got to tell me what you mean. Someone said Florida in the 80s, bales washed up on the beach in front of our house. I believe you. I believe that. I saw the Cowboys movie, so I know that's true. WTF Global. Our family has now retired lawyers and judges, so I know all this is correct. I believe you. I believe that. I saw the documentaries about that. Kyle said, you are right, but those race hustlers push for those punishments, so they are as guilty. Yes, a good amount of them did. You are right about that, Kyle. Those of you who added that context, that's fair. There are many people in the black community who were in support of those laws back in the day. And then it was only later, after the laws went into effect, that we realized the error in our decision. At the same time, the politicians are the ones who pushed it, and they're the ones who we trust to know what the long-term ramifications of those bills will be, and we trusted them with that. So they still get held accountable. King Papa said, now I understand why Trump loves the uneducated. So when you say uneducated, what do you mean? So any of you using this term uneducated, explain to me what exactly you mean when you say that word. When you say uneducated, who are you referring to? Give me a definition of uneducated. Something that's objective definition, not uneducated meaning they don't understand politics. That's not objective. That's subjective. Because what I consider to be understanding could be different than what you consider. So when you say uneducated, any of you using that term, because a few of you have made that comment or made a comment using this word uneducated, what do you mean when you say uneducated? Please articulate that so I can address it. Because I've addressed it in the past, but some of you may just be seeing this for the first time. Traditional said people still locked up today. Absolutely, because it's still a bill. I mean, it's still a law. So the laws are still there. Someone said, just the fact you're talking from the right angle is all it needs to have your lives interrupted. Well, trust me, WTF, this has happened before. I've been kicked off of here 3 times in the past 90 days. for whatever I was saying. I don't know what I said. They don't tell you what you said. That's the problem. The problem with TikTok when they restrict you is they don't tell you why you got restricted. I mean, they have their community guidelines and stuff, and I've read through the guidelines, but it doesn't say, hey, there are certain things. They say, don't say these words. I would just not say them. But they don't tell you what you are saying that violates. But that they all do that, by the way. This is not just TikTok. They all do it. They all have community guidelines like this that say you can't go against our guidelines, and then they don't tell you how you violate the guideline. So this is what happens when you're on other people's platforms, folks. All right, so don't even take this. Is not a negative thing. It's just what it is. When you're on a platform that you don't own, they make the rules. All right, so every one of these platforms I'm on, YouTube, X, Rumble, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, I don't make the rules here because I don't own these platforms. We're just visitors. So you got to play by their rules. 610 said it's not called the ghettos. What is it called? What do you want to call it? A couple of you read that Michelle Alexander book. Y'all should read that. Aiden said people have no idea how much it affects. Yeah, you're right about that. Once you're in it, you're in it. Again, it affects you for the rest of your life. Once you have that on your record, unless you can get your record clean. If you get a good lawyer, you can get your record cleaned up. But if you can't afford a lawyer, which is hard for people to afford a lawyer, is the reason why they were dealing in the first place in the streets. And then you can't get a job. How are you going to pay for a lawyer? So again, it's a cycle. It's a system. There's a reason why it's called the justice system, because once you get in it, it's hard to get out of it. So that's it. WTF said, I am in that business. What we do as a family. All right, that's what's up. Big Stretch says, Trump is a felon. I can be president. All right, well, get your campaign money up, Big Stretch, and run for president in 2028. You best start fundraising right now. You gotta have a certain amount of money to become president. It's not about your background or your skills. Even you gotta have the right backing. You gotta have the money. And what party are you running for? The Republicans, the Democrats? You running for the Green Party? What party are you running for? Greg said, I hear you normally, but this can happen to any ethnicity. Yes, it can, Greg, but who did it happen to? Technically, you're correct. Who did it happen to? And what community was using the crack form of that narcotic? So we're talking about what actually happened, not what could happen. KO said, trust and believe everything your government does 100% done for a methodical and calculated reason. Yes, it is. People in the government are smart people. They're not dumb. These people are not dumb. They know what they're doing. So, Chili Chill, you said something, but I don't know what you're talking about, so I can't even read that. Marriage is cool. So he doesn't own any of the Trump branded buildings, just FYI. All right, fine. But the point is they're known as Trump buildings. That's the point. The general public looks at that building and they think about who. They don't say, I wonder who owns this building. They say that's a Trump building. And people want to protest Trump. Where do they go? To the Trump building. They go stand in front of the Trump building and look at it. Have I read the book Rules for Radicals? Yes, that book was written by, who's that guy's name? I'll tell you where I found that book. The first time I heard of it was through Robert Greene, who's my favorite author. And Robert Greene, when he does a ton of research for his books, so when he writes his books, he puts all his bibliography at the end of the book. And bibliography, for those you don't know what that means, that's all the books that the author referenced to write the current book. So if I write a book and I put my bibliography in the back, that's all the books that I read in order to get information to write my book. Yes, Saul Alinsky. Thank you, Prudence over there on IG. So I just went through Robert Greene's bibliography, every book that he referenced in his book, and then I went and bought all those books and I just read them because 48 Laws of Power is my favorite book. So when he gave his bibliography, I just went and got all those books. So that's where I first heard about Rules for Radicals. So yes, I did read that. But that was I got the 48 Laws probably like 25 years ago. So I probably read Rules for Radicals maybe 2008, 2009. Yeah, they get caught in the cycle. That's correct. KO. They get caught in the circle of recidivism. Exactly. Because once you're in it, you're in it. That's the whole point. The whole point of the system is to keep you in it. So systems can be good. They can be bad. There are systems for keeping people, off drugs. There are systems for keeping people on drugs. Keeping people off drugs, they call it a 12-step program or Alcoholics Anonymous or Drug Users Anonymous. That's the system to keep you off. And then you got systems to keep you on. That's called the medical system. They keep you on drugs. All right, prescriptions. Highwayman said, I think your theory is real. Yeah, I know it's real. I say it that way, Highwayman, to protect myself because I'm on other people's platforms. I got to be careful how I say things. That's the reason I said it that way. So I just want you to get the wink wink behind how I said that. I can't say things so strongly on certain applications. On certain applications, I can say it normally, but on other applications, I cannot. Crespo, Robert Greene wrote 48 Laws of Power, but he read Rules for Radicals as a reference for how he wrote 48 Laws of Power. So I read Robert Greene. Then at the end of his book, he listed a bunch of books that he liked, and I read all those. And one of those was the Saul Alinsky book called The Rules for Radicals. Dorothy says, sounds like a different form of Margaret Sanger. What sounds like that? But I mean, what Sanger created, Planned Parenthood system, is a system. So is crime bill destroyed? Yes, it did. Yes, it did. At the same time, again, we gotta give a point that there were people who were okay with the bill, because people who are everyday folks, like many of our parents who went to work every day, we didn't want the users and the dealers in our community, so we wanted them to go to jail. So we can't put it all on them, but at the same time, they're the ones who put it out there, so they got to put their names on it. CJ said, no one's to celebrate any nepotism. Now, CJ, I get your point on the surface, but I would challenge that, because I don't know if you have kids, CJ, but if and when you do have kids, you would use that nepotism to help your kids out, wouldn't you? I will. I'm going to use nepotism to help my kids out. My kids are going to have advantages that other kids don't have because they have me as a father. That's nepotism. So nepotism is not a bad thing. We only get mad at nepotism when it doesn't benefit us. But if nepotism, like if your dad was rich and he left you $100 million, would you be mad? I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'll take that. So nepotism is not a bad thing, folks. We just want to get on the right side of it. I appreciate you, Black Weasel 8512. Thank you, Vivian Garcia. Good to hear from you. Yes, I do these every day, 8 a.m. Eastern is when I usually start. I started a little bit late today, which is my mistake. The name of the book. Which book? So I mentioned 2 books. So there was Rules for Radicals. Brittany mentioned that book. Brittany, can you post the names of these books? Rules for Radicals is one. The author is Alinsky. And who was that? Prudence Parlay on Instagram gave me the name of the author. And then the book that I referenced was 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. So Kamala enforced the hell out of that bill in California. Well, hey, if that was the bill or the law, then and that's what she's supposed to do. I mean, Kamala was a prosecutor, right? So I mean, she got to do what she's told to do. You're a prosecutor. You work for the state, so the state tells you what to do, and then you do it. So that's how it goes. Yeah, live free, like Live Free 303 said, it's her job. If you are a prosecutor, you work for the government. You don't do what you want to do. You do what you're told to do. Someone said he did it here too at a Heat game. Casino Week said, "Are you a lawyer?" People keep asking me that, so I'm gonna start saying yes. So Casino Week, yes, I'm a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm gonna start answering yes. People keep asking me if I'm a lawyer. Even when I'm out in the street in Miami, people ask me if I'm a lawyer. I got to think how I can leverage that. I got to come up with some good ideas. How can I leverage? Some of y'all help me out. How can I leverage if people ask me I'm a lawyer and I say yes? How can I leverage that for my own personal gain? I haven't figured it out yet, but I got to start answering that question yes, because so many people keep asking me. The books that people need to read are Beautiful Things by Hunter Biden. All right. The laptop. I heard about the laptop book. I have not read it, but I heard about it. It sounds interesting. Eric said no freedom of speech on a certain app. Well, you got some freedom. It's not full freedom. I got some freedom. I mean, I'm doing this live right here. I'm doing something, but you can't say certain things you can't say. But they shouldn't ban it yet, because actually I got a pretty solid audience over here, so they shouldn't ban it yet. If they ban it, not yet. And I think if Harris had won, maybe they might have. But with Trump winning, I don't think so. Black Weasel said, can you comment on a party switch supposed to have mysteriously happened? That would have to be a whole live, Black Weasel. And before I comment on it and talk about it, I would have to read about what I would do. Black Weasel, let me tell you how I would answer that question if I answered it. I can't answer it right now because I don't have enough information. And I'll tell you all that. If I don't have enough information to offer an opinion on something, I'll just tell people that I'm not going to talk about it because I don't know enough to give you anything of deep substance. Now, what I would do, though, because Black Weasel was asking about this alleged party switch, because those of you who don't know about it, that people often say, or people say that the Republicans are all like racist and the quote unquote white people, and the Democrats are all about helping the black people and stuff like that. And a lot of black people talk about this stuff. And people say, well, wait a minute, it was the Democrats who were in charge of Jim Crow laws and in charge of the slavery, and that the party that wanted to end slavery were actually Republicans, not Democrats. And then people said, well, the parties switched places, basically from being for black people to against them sometime in the 1900s, that they switched. And what Black Weasel was asking is, can I comment on this alleged switch? So what I'm saying here, my answer to his question is that in order for me to answer that, here's what I would do. And this is the part that I want you all to get. What I would do is I would go read some materials. I would watch some book. I watch some YouTube videos, and I would listen to some podcasts of people who have studied that stuff more than I have. And I would listen to both sides, people who say there was a switch and people who say there was not a switch. I would listen to some podcasts, watch some YouTube, and read some books on it. And then based on all of that, I will come to my own conclusion, and then I will talk about it. But since I have not done that work yet, I won't talk about it because I don't have any information to really offer you except what I just told you. So thank you for asking the question, but I don't really have anything to give you. What I would say as a general answer to the question, period, is that I am not affiliated with either party, and I don't trust either party to do anything for me. I will use them the same way they use me. That's the way I look at politics, period. So I'm not on either side, even though when I talk about these things, most of the time people label me as a conservative or Republican or MAGA. I don't know why, but all I do is try to talk about things logically and objectively. So being logical and objective means I'm a conservative and MAGA. Then my question is, what does that say about the Democrats and the liberals? If being logical and objective makes you sound like a Republican, then what does that say about the Democrats? That's my open question to everybody. So there's an average of 4,000 people working in higher up government. He has to continue. Yeah, exactly. Crespo said, you can say I'm not a lawyer, but I should be. LOL. Okay, that's a good joke. I'm trying to think of how I can leverage that into something even further than that. So that's what I don't know yet. Term limits. Yeah, we need term limits. That would make things a lot more fluid, and it would force people to do their actual jobs. Jay said, I think when the shooting happened with Trump, I think that was part of it. The thing is, it came and went so quick. People stopped talking about it in like 2 weeks. And KO said, the government is a business. I'll take a businessman over a politician any day. Me too. And people don't believe he was. Yeah, some people say he wasn't, but nobody, they got to prove it. I mean, if you say it didn't happen, you got to prove it. Because the guy who did the shooting, he got shot. So they did all that and sacrificed lives. And then somebody did actually get hit that day. Not Trump. Well, not got fully hit. So they did all that just to push a story. That sounds kind of fishy. Monica said, seems like a conflict of interest. So of course it's a conflict of interest. That's the whole point. Yes, it's a conflict of interest. It's not seems like, it is. But that's how it is. That's how it works. This is the government, ladies and gentlemen. This is the government that we all have voted for and allowed. Yes, everything is done for a methodical and calculated reason. That is correct. WTF says, I got 4 platforms and you are my go-to at this point to clarify output. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be in that position. Thank you, WTF Global News. Slick Pendergrass says, don't worry about Hunter. There's no law anywhere and police need to quit. Be careful, everyone. Yeah. So I stopped doing lies. You got to be careful what you say. So you got to talk around stuff, WTF. My superpower is my ability to kind of break things down and make it easy to understand. But at the same time, I know what I can say and what I can't say. And every time I get a slap from TikTok, it sharpens my skill of how to talk about things without saying the wrong thing. So I've just gotten better at it. Someone said TikTok days are numbered. Well, we don't want them to be numbered yet. Actually, TikTok is I like TikTok for now because it's getting it's bringing people to me who otherwise didn't know about me. So I'm glad TikTok exists. But if their days are numbered, then that means all of y'all need to be following me over on YouTube. Make sure you're on TikTok. Follow me on YouTube. My link to my YouTube is in my bio on TikTok because things will happen over here. So a couple more comments, then we'll be done. Trust me, there's so much discussion with DOJ. Yeah, we know. Lawyer of Truth. Is that a book? Cam in K-Town sounds like you need to go to law school. I am never going to any other school. I'm never going to any school ever again. Not the kind of school you're talking about. I'll go to Work on Your Game University, which is my program where we help people with their business and personal and professional development, that kind of school. But I'm never, ever going to any school. I have a 4-year college degree, and I knew as soon as I got out of there, I said, no more of this. No advanced degrees, no PhDs, no masters. No. I'm not made for academia. Bro said, bro, Dre, speak your opinion is all good. No, it's not all good. That's the whole point. It's not all good. Speaking your opinion will get you banned off this app. So no, you cannot speak your opinion as fully as you want to. You trying to get me kicked off TikTok. I think you're trying to set me up. Live free 303. Live free 303. I think you're trying to get me set up to get kicked off TikTok. You cannot speak your opinion fully on this app. That'll get you kicked off real quick. I already know. I've been suspended twice, 3 times. The third time I appealed and they said it was okay, and I got right back on the same day. But the other 2 times I got suspended for a whole week and I could not go live. So no, do not speak your opinion on TikTok. That's a bad idea. Don't take Live Free's advice. Now, you can speak your opinion on all the other apps. I speak my opinion on Instagram, YouTube. Even YouTube will suppress your stuff if you say the wrong things. When that virus was out a few years ago and I was talking about it a lot on my videos, YouTube was suppressing my stuff and not letting it get seen. So Rumble, you can speak your mind. X, you can speak your mind. All the other ones, you cannot speak your mind. So any of you who's on the internet and you want to speak your mind, get on X because it's owned by Elon, and get on Rumble. I don't even know who owns Rumble, but we know that it allows for more what people consider to be conservative voices. You can speak your mind on those apps. On every other app, if you speak your mind, they will either kick you off or they'll ban your content or they will suppress your content so people can't see it. All right. And nobody can, again, everybody knows this. Well, not everybody, but y'all should know that. Monica said, I love this platform. You're so level-headed and objective. Well, thank you. And to most people, that means I must be MAGA or conservative. Again, what does that say about the Democrats? That's all I got to say. If me talking like this makes me MAGA or conservative, that means the Democrats got a problem. What books do I recommend on understanding politics? Wow. Anybody answer that question? Who got some answers? Give me some answers for Monica here. What books do you recommend on understanding politics? Politics is a very deep subject. So I'm thinking you mean governmental politics, right? Not politics like engagement between people, because people engaging with each other is also known as politics. Like you got office politics, you got neighborhood politics. I'm assuming you're talking about the government, but man, there are so many. So anybody got some suggestions on books on politics? I got a bunch that I haven't even gotten to yet. I got a lot of books I listen to audiobooks most of these days. I have so many that I haven't read yet. But what I tend to do is I switch in between different types of books. So I'll read a biography, then I'll read a book that's about something that's not like so serious. Then I'll read a business book. Then I'll read something that's about like a social issue. So I'll kind of go in between all of them. Right now, I'm reading a book about Nike's running business, the Nike running industry, like marathoners and 10K runners. And there's a whole business behind that I didn't even know about, but I'm reading that book right now. After that, I'll probably I got to read Obama's book. Let me tell you what I'm going to read next. So I got Barack Obama's book that I need to read. Then so this book is called Win at All Costs. It's about Nike and the Nike running business. Then I'm going to read, Deborah So has a book about gender. I'm going to read that. There's a book called Reigns by David Epstein. I'm going to read. These are all in my library. Then I'm going to read Barack Obama's The Audacity of Hope. I didn't get around to that one yet. Then I'm going to read The Hacking of the American Mind by Robert Lustig, The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. And then I'll also, at the same time, I'll go back and reread books like The 33 Strategies of War, 40 Laws of Power. These are all books that I've read 30 times. I'll read them again. Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar. I like to read that a lot. And some of these books are very long. So I read a lot. I got more books than I have time, but I try to read them as quickly as possible. So Prudence over there on Instagram said, Manning Johnson, Color, Communism, and Common Sense. This is the answer for you, Monica. Prudence said anything from Hillsdale, Hillsdale. So let me look up Hillsdale. I don't think I know Hillsdale. Give me some titles of those books, Prudence, who you're talking about, Hillsdale. But I'm gonna look it up while you're talking. But what I do is anytime I hear someone mention a book that sounds interesting to me, I just go and add it to my library. Because with audiobooks, you can't even buy the audiobook on the phone, which makes no sense. Audible's losing a lot of money by not letting people buy the book on the phone. But I'll just add it to my library. Then when I get on a computer, I'll just buy a couple at the same time. Miss Good News says I repost stuff and I know that's what they do. They all do that. They all do that. So it's not just you they're doing it to. They do that to everybody. And also, Monica, I recommend books by Thomas Sowell, Sowell. Now he is not writing specifically about politics. What he's writing about is society. And he breaks it down in a logical and objective way that from which you can draw your own conclusions. So I'm a big fan of Thomas Sowell. So I would read Sowell's books. As far as like, he's an older guy. He's like 90 something years old. Dave Rubin wrote a book that I liked. I'm trying to think. I got so many books. I read so many books that I forget. I used to be able to just reel off damn near every book that I read, but I read so many that I can't even remember them all. But let me see what I got. Things that are, let me see, politically based. It depends on the subject also. Like anything specific in politics, I can get more specific. But man, I've read I'm just looking to see. Thomas Sowell already mentioned to you. Man, I've read more books than I thought. But I have a bunch that are political based that I'm going to read that I haven't gotten around to. What is the guy's name that wrote a book about? Oh, I'm going to read Robert F. Kennedy. He's a good guy. I got to be careful. I don't know if I can even say his name. I got to be careful saying his name. RFKJ. He has some books. He's mostly on the like the medical side of things, but he has some good books. What I would suggest, Monica, is that you go into certain specific areas and read about those areas, and then you can piece it all together. So if you say, all right, I want to read about the medical side of government, all right, read that. Then I want to read about the like social issues, like things where people talk about race, read that. Then when it comes to crime, read that one. Then when it comes to like the presidents, like books about the presidents themselves. So Walter Isaacson is a good one. He writes these long, in-depth books about individual people. So you can read those. I would read books by the politicians themselves. They all write books. Bill Clinton's got books. George W. Bush has books. Obama has books. Trump has books. Hillary Clinton has books. Kamala's got books. Biden has books. I will read their books and hear what they have to say about themselves, because they'll tell you exactly what they're doing and tell on themselves, basically. So you should read their books as well. So I would just kind of get more detailed and just piece down into specific areas. All right, everybody. So 8 a.m. Eastern, every Monday through Friday is when I do these lives. So y'all can catch the next one tomorrow. Tomorrow is probably, barring anything else changing, we're going to talk about SA. The second word in that is assault. All right. So I can't say that. I probably don't want to say that phrase, but I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. And I think there's some madness going on in this area. This will be an interesting topic because this one tends to lead to sometimes a divide between males and females on the subject, but we're going to talk about it tomorrow. And as in detail as I can. And I'm going to use a couple situations as frames for this and my perspective on it and how I feel like it's getting misused in some ways based on things that have happened societally. I know I'm going to use the UFC fighter from Ireland as an example, and I'm going to use one of the guys that Trump is trying to appoint to his cabinet as another example. And I don't know, I got to be careful saying their names. But the guy that Trump's trying to appoint to his cabinet, his initials are PH. Y'all should look into his story. And then the UFC fighter, his initials are CM. He lives in Ireland. I already said his name earlier, so I guess I could say his name, Conor McGregor. So he had something that happened. So that's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, barring anything that comes up today that will bump that off the list. But that's where we're going next. So y'all be ready for that. I will see you all. Thank you, Brittany, for moderating my comments over on TikTok. Shout out to everybody over on YouTube, Rumble, X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram who've been watching. Work on Your Game University is the place where my focus is. It's where I do all my coaching. I have coaching programs. We got group programs. We have, if you want to work with me one-on-one, we do landing page funnel design for people as well, also known as copywriting. We do that for people. That's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's the link in my bio. If you are following me on TikTok, make sure you follow me on at least one other app, because anything can happen on this app that doesn't happen on the other ones. So be careful if you're only following me on TikTok. Don't think that I disappeared. I didn't. I'm just on all the other apps. Everybody have a great Tuesday. Today, Tuesday? Yes. I will see you all tomorrow. Work on your game.